I think it is totally unconventional and unprecedented. I can't remember any occasion on which I was told or any officer was told to prepare a plan in anticipation of a person coming back to power. That is an unusual kind of direction given by the Prime Minister. It's not right for a government. It is not in the spirit of democracy. So I do believe that once an election is announced, the role of government certainly changes. The character of government certainly changes. Democracy demands that when an election is announced, thereafter, it is only a holding operation which the incumbent government performs. That is, they do the routine work.
Was it also, Mr. Chandrasekhar, not just tasteless, was it also improper and a misuse of government power?
I absolutely agree.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given instructions to senior civil servants to prepare a roadmap for the first 100 days as well as the first 6 months of the new government, even though there is absolutely no guarantee that he will return to office. And that leads to two critical questions. Is this understandable and acceptable, or is it a breach of democratic propriety and the spirit of a fair election? Those are the issues I should raise today with someone who is best placed to answer those questions, former Cabinet Secretary K.M. Chandrasekhar. Mr. Chandrasekhar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has ordered senior civil servants to prepare a roadmap for the first 100 days as well as the first 6 months of the new government that will come to power after the forthcoming elections. But as I said in the introduction, there is absolutely no guarantee that that government will be led by Mr. Modi. So let me start by asking, has this sort of thing ever happened before? Or is it unconventional and maybe even unprecedented?
I think it is totally unconventional and unprecedented. I can't remember any occasion on which I was told or any officer was told to prepare a plan in anticipation of a person coming back to power. That is an unusual kind of direction given by the Prime Minister. Possibly he wants to give the impression that he's sure of coming back. And that has been his effort throughout, as you recall, when with all his publicity programs, with the kind of statements he's been making, saying 370 seats, 400 seats. I think it's part of a psychological kind of warfare.
The last time we had a prime minister who it was widely believed would return to power for a second or third term was Jawaharlal Nehru. Is there any reason to believe that Mr. Nehru gave similar orders to civil servants to prepare a roadmap for his new government, even though that government had yet to be elected?
I can't recall any incident where the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru ever told his subordinates, his officers, to prepare a 100-day plan or a 2-year plan or a 1-year plan. Of course, he believed in planning, long-term planning he believed in. But you see, Jawaharlal Nehru, when you talk of him, he was very much a Democrat at heart. I mean, he would have been, I think, quite happy if another government came to power and he was defeated. He was a real believer in democracy.
So there was no question of Mr. Nehru asking civil servants to prepare a roadmap in advance of a government that had not even been elected.
I don't think there would have been any occasion on which he made gave any such direction to his subordinates.
Has this sort of thing ever happened before in any other democracy? Margaret Thatcher won 3 consecutive elections in Britain, so too did Tony Blair. But I don't believe either of them ever ordered civil servants to prepare roadmaps for their future governments until those governments were elected. So is there any precedent anywhere in the democratic world where such a thing has happened?
Well, I can't think of any. I don't think Margaret Thatcher or Donald Trump even would have ever thought of preparing for another tenure in government, because that is left to the voter. The voter has to decide which government will come to power, and that government generally, I mean, I have come across occasions where this 100-day plan was prepared. That was done by successive governments in Kerala. But that's not before the election, that's after the election.
When
Every
it's
5,
perfectly, but after
yeah,
the elections, Mr. Chandrasekhar, it's perfectly legitimate for a government to prepare a 100-day roadmap because they've been elected, they have a mandate to do so. As you said,
correct.
it is totally unconventional and totally unprecedented for a government to order a roadmap be prepared for the first 100 days or the first 6 months before that government has even been elected. When it's possible, it may never get elected. As you said, it's not only totally unconventional and totally unprecedented in India, you don't believe this has ever happened in any other democracy either.
Yeah, that is what I believe. But I must say that in my own case, when in 2009, when there was a government changing, that is, it was not sure whether the BJP will win or Manmohan Singh will come back to power. I did prepare a 100-day I got my officers to prepare a 100-day kind of a program, because I thought it will be useful for for either government, whichever government comes in. If they are ready with a program, and they can go ahead, they can hit the deck running.
Absolutely, but I take it there are two critical differences here. First of all, you did this of your own volition as cabinet secretary, not because
Yes,
the outgoing prime minister had ordered you to do it. And secondly, you did it for whichever party came to power, not
that's
for
right.
the ruling party of the time.
Right, right. And also, Dr. Manmohan Singh wasn't too pleased with this. He later on said, I never asked anybody to prepare a 100-day plan.
Right. This is even more important. Dr. Manmohan Singh, the outgoing but sitting prime minister at the time, wasn't too pleased with what you were doing. In other words, it was
Yes,
your initiative. It certainly was not done at his behest.
correct. It was not done at his behest. He wasn't
Let's
sure
then,
that
Mr.
he will win.
Let's then, Mr. Chandrasekhar, come to the implications of this order to prepare a roadmap for a government that doesn't as yet exist. Civil servants will, of course, obey orders, but isn't there a danger that the time they spend and the effort they put in creating this roadmap could be entirely wasted because if the opposition wins, they'll have to start afresh?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. Now, one way of looking at it is that whichever government comes in, if the plan, whatever is done by the officers, that fits into their own manifesto, they might accept elements of that plan. But the other aspect is that it is also possible that just because, say, if a non-BJP government comes in, they may say that everything that the BJP done was wrong, and therefore we must reject the whole thing. So both possibilities are there.
Absolutely, but it would be a fortuitous set of circumstances if part of a roadmap that is created for a future BJP government happens to, by coincidence, also suit a non-BJP government. That would be a fortuitous outcome, but it's quite possible that the new government, being an opposition government, will actually want to revoke and reverse a lot that the BJP has done, and therefore a roadmap per the BJP's directions might be a complete waste of time and effort.
With the present atmosphere, I think that could be the reaction of any government that is not BJP. The whole exercise of preparing a 100-day plan or a 2-year plan or a 1-year plan or whatever it is, that is based on the assumption that the BJP is coming back to power and is coming back to power with a huge majority. That is the underlying assumption.
Absolutely. And that presumption is nothing more than a presumption at the moment. Now, the key question, Mr. Chandrasekhar, is one of propriety, and it seems there are two issues here. A.K. Bhattacharya, the editorial director of the Business Standard, asks, can a government in the run-up to the elections ask civil servants to prepare an action plan that it wants to implement once it gets elected? Should there be a pause in government planning or decision-making once elections are called, provided there is no crisis to be handled? What's your answer to his question that there should be a pause in government planning or decision-making once elections are called?
That is generally the practice, because unless you're absolutely, even if you're absolutely sure, it's only fair to the other side. It's only fair to the voter that an assumption is made that the others will be wiped out. I mean, that's not good democracy. Speaking of that. But altogether, I think at this point of time, to prepare a 100-day plan, I think this must have been done before quite some time ago, not at the present stage.
No, in fact, the truth, can I interrupt? The truth is, according to PTI, instructions to prepare a 100-day roadmap and a 6-month roadmap were repeated and reiterated a day after the Model Code of Conduct was announced. I believe the Model Code of Conduct was announced on the 16th of March. PTI says these instructions were reiterated on the 17th of March.
No, that was unfortunate. I mean, even as you know, the budget, it is an interim budget that is presented by an outgoing government. It's not a full-fledged budget that a government will present. That they'll come back to the parliament later. So at this stage, preparing a plan at the political level through officials, I think there is something odd about it.
The second issue, propriety, concerns how the Election Commission should view Mr. Modi's orders. Once again, Mr. Bhattacharya writes, the key question here is whether there is a change in the character of the government once the Election Commission notifies the election schedule. What's your answer to this question? Once the election schedule, the Model Code of Conduct have come into operation, has the character of the government changed?
Actually, that is the way in which the electoral system works out. I remember in 2009, when the elections were announced, and at the same time, we were struggling with handling the crisis of 2008 and 2009, the Great Depression. I went to the Election Commission. Gopal Swamy was then the Chief Election Commissioner. We had Naveen Chawla and Qureshi. I sat with them and told them that it will be disastrous if we decide now not to implement schemes, to hold up development. They agreed wholeheartedly with me. They said the only thing is no minister may inaugurate anything, and also that any such proposal should come through the cabinet secretary. So we followed that, and 2-3 months, we implemented programs, we did developmental work, but following these guidelines of the Election Commission. You see, the Election Commission assumes authority. You can see so many district magistrates are being transferred, so many police officers are being transferred. So I do believe that once an election is announced, the role of government certainly changes. The character of government certainly changes.
This is a very important thing you're saying. Once the election is announced, the role of government, the character of government certainly changes. And to cite the example that you quoted a moment ago, in 2009, you specifically sought the permission of the Election Commission to continue with certain schemes because, as you said, it would be a disaster if they were suspended. And I presume that had you not got that permission, you wouldn't have continued with them. But because you got that permission, you were justified and authorized to do so.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, this raises the critical question Do Mr. Modi's orders breach the spirit of the Model Code of Conduct, even if they may not breach its specific letter? Once again, Mr. Bhattacharya writes, once the Model Code of Conduct is enforced by the Election Commission, should the government of the day refrain from taking an active interest in policy making for the next 5 years and let that be the function of the new government? Do you believe that this order to prepare a roadmap for 100 days or for 6 months breaches the spirit of the Model Code of Conduct?
Well, I think democracy demands that when an election is announced, thereafter it is only a holding operation which the incumbent government performs. That is, they do the routine work. If a crisis comes, of course, they will have to handle it. Last time I think we had Pulwama. If such crises come, and as I told you, like the 2008-9 crisis, we needed to handle this crisis and we handled it. But otherwise, they would just do the routine work, allow the next government, if they come back, they can continue with the work. If they don't come back, the other government will do it.
You've said something very important, and with your permission, I will repeat it for the audience. Speaking as a former cabinet secretary, you said, and I think I'm quoting you correctly, I think democracy demands when an election is announced, thereafter, it's only a holding operation that is expected of the government. In other words, the government simply holds this deck together till the new results emerge and a new government takes over. It doesn't function as if it is a substantive government with the mandate to behave as it wants. That is the key change that takes place once the election is announced. Have I summed you up correctly?
Now, you have summed me up correctly, and you must also know that there are many countries in the world where after the election is announced, the government itself changes. You have a neutral president or a neutral prime minister who takes over and then carries on the holding operation.
Absolutely. One such country is our neighbor to the west,
Yes.
Pakistan. Another country where this was the practice until Sheikh Hasina abrogated it was Bangladesh. So both our neighbors have had this practice. Pakistan continues with it. Sheikh Hasina and Bangladesh has abrogated it. But it's not an unusual practice that a neutral caretaker government will replace the substantive government once elections are announced.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Have we reached a situation where the Election Commission should express its opinion whether the letter or spirit of the Model Code of Conduct has been breached, rather than stay silent and leave everyone in doubt? Given that we are smack in the middle of an election campaign and this is a critical campaign, do we need clarity and clarification rather than doubt and uncertainty? And should the Election Commission make its personal opinion clear that we believe that giving orders to work out a roadmap for 100 days or 6 months is a breach of the Model Code of Conduct? It is a breach of the democratic spirit of fair elections.
Well, the Election Commission is a constitutional body, as you know, and like any court of law, it will take its own decisions, which may not correspond with what I believe. I mean, it could be something entirely different. But I don't know whether this issue has been ever brought to its notice. Generally, these judicial bodies, constitutional bodies, act only when an issue is before them. They don't try to act, except for a brief period when session was there.
I hear what you're saying. This issue may not have been formally brought to their notice, although Mr.
Yes.
A.K. Bhattacharya, by writing an op-ed in the Business Standard, has brought it into the public domain. But were the issue to be brought to the notice of the Election Commission, do you think then they should immediately issue a clarification and make their own position clear?
Certainly, I think if the issue is brought to the Election Commission, they should issue a clarification, make their position.
And the clarification would be that it is not proper, it is not fitting for a government to be ordering a roadmap to be prepared for the future government, which is yet to be elected, on the assumption that the present government will continue after the elections. That is neither proper nor fair, nor is it in the spirit of democracy.
That is my view. But what the Election Commission will decide after hearing both the parties, that I couldn't say.
Absolutely. But it's your view as a former cabinet secretary that is of interest
Yes.
to me and of interest to the audience. One more issue, Mr. Chandrasekhar. If central ministries are asked to prepare their action plans for the next 5 years, some of those details may come out into the public domain even whilst elections are being held. And once again, Mr. Bhattacharya asks, won't that give an advantage to the ruling party over its rivals? Whilst other political parties can only offer manifesto promises, the ruling party will then be in the position of boasting that actual plans are being worked upon. Would that give it an advantage?
I think actually this has been done already. Regardless of the 100-day plan, the present government has been going out and saying we are all ready. We are going to do this, we are going to do that. You saw the BJP manifesto, which is very sharply focused and indicates also the action to be taken by them in respect of all the issues that they have mentioned. The Congress manifesto, of course, is not so very clear because they are in the opposition. They have to come there and then decide. But certainly this kind of thing, where one side jumps the gun, that is very uncomfortable in a democracy.
And that advantage has already accrued to the government in power.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Then let me ask you for some sense of perspective. We've discussed this subject from multiple points of view. As a former cabinet secretary, how serious a situation has Mr. Modi's order created? How worrying or how serious a situation is this?
Well, it is, there are many things that have been done. It's not just this particular incident of 100-day thing. Many other statements that have been made, many actions that have been taken, where the bureaucracy or even the senior political executive does not seem to have that much of a role. This has been the trend for the last few years. So I'm not surprised that this has happened.
But on this particular issue, how serious or how worrying is the situation that's been created by Mr. Modi giving orders to senior civil servants to prepare a roadmap for 100 days or for 6 months for a government that is yet to be elected? And it may not in the end be Mr. Modi's government either.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either government. In a democracy,
so how serious is the situation, sir?
Well, I would say it is not particularly serious because we have seen this kind of thing, commitments being made and commitments not being carried out. Whether it is put into a 100-day plan or a 1-year plan or a 2-year plan, does this really make a difference? Do you think the people are going to be swayed by that? They are going to look at all the 5 years.
I understand. It's not a particularly serious situation because it will not sway the voters.
Yes.
But in terms of democratic propriety,
yes,
in terms of the spirit of a fair election, how serious and damaging is it?
No, it is certainly not desirable that any such action should be taken in the context of an election already having been announced. And of course, the officers will have to prepare and they will prepare. The officers would have prepared in the past also when I told them in 2009. But it's not right for a government. It is not in the spirit of democracy.
Not right, not in the spirit of democracy.
Democracy.
Tell me this, sir. You know civil servants. You know better than me that serving senior civil servants will be well aware that a certain red line has been crossed by this order. As servants who obey orders given by their political masters, civil servants will certainly fulfill what they've been asked to do. But how seriously will they do it?
Well, I couldn't really say. That depends on the officers who are presently in position. And since I don't keep contact with them, once I left the job, I have not been keeping contact.
But is
So I
there
don't know how seriously they do.
But is there a chance that while saying, yes, sir, of course, we will prepare a roadmap, they may not put their entire effort and duty into doing it?
Could happen. It could be just a kind of a routine function that they carry out. Or if there is too much of pressure on them, they may be doing just that. These things happen, but this has been going on for a long time. It's not something new.
Absolutely. That raises a second question that I'd like to touch upon before I end this interview. Are civil servants being misused by the Modi government? Earlier last year, the government ordered Joint Secretary officers and below to act as Rath Prabharis and showcase the achievements of the last 9 years of the government. You have already gone on record to The Wire in an interview to Meetu Jain, where you said this was tasteless. Was it also, Mr. Chandrasekhar, not just tasteless, was it also improper and a misuse of government power?
I absolutely agree. I don't think, you see, let me again give you an example from my own career. When I was cabinet secretary, I used to take secretaries from various ministries in the government of India. I used to take them a couple of plane loads to various weaker states, Assam, the Northeast, Kashmir, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, such states. I used to take them there. The whole idea was to solve problems, because many things that the government wants to do, which they are held up in Delhi, or they could be held up in the government, in the state governments. If these two meet, there will be greater interaction and they will be able to perform better. That is one part of it. But asking them to go and say what great things have been done, that's completely tasteless, as I said.
But you went one step further. You said not only was it completely tasteless, when I asked you, was it also improper and a misuse of government power? And your reply was, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because if such a thing has happened, I have not seen any Rath Prabhari around here. I don't know whether he has come and gone, but I think if a direction has been given, we go and promote our programs. There are many ways. You see, one big problem that I see with this government, that it seems to have lost contact with the state governments. You see, after all, state governments are there. I recall once at a National Development Committee meeting, NDC meeting, Nitish Kumar raised a big objection, saying, why did Montek Ahluwalia, he was a planning commission vice chairman at the time, why did he speak to the district collectors? Why he is supposed to speak to the state government? Now, that interaction between the state and the center, which the Prime Minister Modi himself, at the beginning of his tenure, he said, I want Team India. I remember attending his first Niti Aayog meeting.
Sure.
They had a placard behind saying Team India. So that concept is gone. So something is happening there, which is not good.
Finally, if we look at the recent order to prepare roadmaps and the earlier order to showcase government achievements, is Prime Minister Modi guilty of misusing his power and authority over civil servants?
Well, I wouldn't like to say Prime Minister Modi, because I don't know whether he issued it or anyone else issued it.
Well, clearly, the order to prepare a roadmap was issued by him.
Maybe his roadmap. Raj Prabhari, I don't know whose idea it was.
But is he guilty of misusing his power and authority over civil servants when he asks them to prepare a roadmap for the next 100 days of the new government and the first 6 months of the new government? Is that a misuse of power and authority?
I don't know whether it is misuse of authority. I mean, if authority is exercised in this manner, it certainly is, again, using the same word, tasteless. And it is not in the interests of democracy. It's not in accordance with the spirit of democracy. But he has a power, he has an authority, he has a conception of how to exercise that authority. And he doesn't seem to have that much of respect for the civil servants also, as previous prime ministers had. And that is possibly one reason why he feels they should be just doing these things.
I understand. Let me repeat what you said so there's clarity for the audience. You said this exercise of authority is not desirable, it's not right, it's tasteless, it's not in the spirit of democracy. Is it therefore an impropriety?
It is, well, impropriety, yes, I would say it is an impropriety. Yeah.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, thank you very much for making time for me. Thank you very much for sharing your views on an issue that sadly so far hasn't got the attention it deserves, but does require to be analyzed and talked about because it is critical to the functioning of our democracy and critical to the mores and practices and conventions that we should nurture and enhance rather than discard. I thank you for making time for me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Thapar. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.